All right, Brian, this is one of my favorite topics. Influencers come sometimes just in one moment, saying something, sometimes in a lifetime. When I speak, I talk a lot in this subject about my grandfather, him, my grandmother, my mom, my aunt. They immigrated from Kyiv, Ukraine, years and years ago to Canada. And I remember my grandfather used to take me for walks in the park when I was 5, and he talked to everybody. And one day I asked him, I call him Zeta. I said, Zeta, how do you know all these people? And I remember him pointing and saying, "See that man over there?" One day I smiled at him. He looked at me and smiled at me, and he came over and we started laughing. And then someone else came over and smiled at us. And I still have it in my friends would say my 5-year-old brain is sometimes still there, but that's another conversation. But I still remember thinking, life's going to be easy. I just have to smile at people, and it's going to be cool. And I did realize that sometimes it even is just a smile can make a big impact. So we all have had different influences in our lives, hopefully more positive than negative influences. But can you share two or three people that have had influence on your life?
Sure. So, you know, for me, there's certain kind of stories that I tell myself that motivate me. So for example, my father, you know, he asked me after I recovered from Crohn's. My brother also has Crohn's, and he said, um, the one thing that you could do for me, the most important thing, the only thing I ever want is for you to get your brother off of the medication. And when I went to my brother and I showed him my blood and stool test results, and I said, look, I'm living symptom free without medication. And he said, well, what are you eating? And I told him what I was eating at the time, which was, cans of sardine and white rice and so forth. And he said, you call that living? So I haven't yet been able to convince him to get off the medication,
Hmm.
but every single day I ask myself, you call that living? And when I'm eating, like today for lunch, I had a bolognese with our marinara sauce, which is like marinara with no tomatoes. I'm like, yep, this is what living is. I'm eating foods that I enjoy, and I feel normal. And also like even with my daughter, um, you know, when she was after COVID, she started to have some digestive issues.
Hmm.
And she'd wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning and she'd be in our master bathroom over here, and she would have stomach pain and be crying and praying to God for the pain to stop. And I would wake up and I'm like, this is not my fault, but it is my responsibility to do something about it. And my goal is to never sell Get Saucy, that I'm going to run it for the next 40 plus years, and that I'm going to pass it down to my daughter so that she can live symptom free without medication for the rest of her life, even when I'm gone.
Yeah, that's turned out to be a big influence. Your dad, and even what your brother said, to make it more passionate. Even anybody else you'd want to share about that has been an influence?
Yeah, I mean, I have my college professor, Professor Keller. He was a really big influence on me and how I think about security and programming, which is, a really big part of my career, even before, I did the sauce company.
Hmm.
Um, but that, that's the way that I made the vast majority of my money. The sauce company is my passion project right now,
Hmm.
and it's sort of my give back to the world. Like I'm not raising money for it, and because I never plan to sell the company,
And you
so
said you
there's no
said
point.
you said in the other conversation that your partner, your co-founder, sounds like he was an influence with
Yeah, yeah. Suhan obviously was without Suhan, the company would not exist. Um, he was able to, you know, when I told him to make me three sauces, um, he gave me three sauces. He actually made eight, but he didn't tell me that he made eight. He kept that information back for a while. He could not help himself. He was so inspired and motivated and excited about what we were doing that it challenged him in a way that he had never been challenged before in his entire career.
Hmm.
And he also knew how important it was. You know, this is what's needed. You have to be able to get past people's taste buds and their immune systems, and obviously their microbiomes. You know, I believe that millions of years ago, bacteria got together and said, you know, we want to be more mobile, so they invented humans. And we're here to serve our microbiome and not the other way around. And most of the time we spend trying to kill our microbiome with toothpaste that are made by detergent companies, and with antibiotics and with, you know, these different pesticides and chemicals. And they're performing such a vital function for us. And that was a big key for me getting better, was regulating my mucus by avoiding foods that triggered my immune system, but then feeding my microbiome. Um, we've strategically outsourced some of the most important metabolites to our microbiome, and so we have to treat them, you know, with the respect. I call them my stomach buddies or stomach pets. Um, but somebody has to speak for those little guys, because, you know, give them a voice.
I like it. So you're being an influencer to them, in effect, I guess. I think if one thing it does teach us, I find, is we're influencing people all the time too, and hopefully it's positively versus negative. Thanks for sharing all that. I really appreciate that.
Thanks, Mark.